Pastor Casey picked a beautiful and fun centering thought, and I thought it'd be fun to do it in unison, so I hope you'll join me, please. I've been staring at the world, waiting. I've been looking for a change lately. All the trouble and all the pain we're facing. Someone gotta be the hope, and someone gotta be the light. Too much light to be living in the dark. Where are we going? We ain't getting very far. Why waste time? We only got one life. And don't you know it starts today? And baby, no, it's not too late. It begins with you and me. Together we can be the change. So go on, let your heart burn and watch it catch like a wildfire. I believe in you and me. Together we can be the change. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. I'm Lynn, and I'm your service associate. And I want to also make sure we also wave at the Zoomers. Hi, Zoomers. Thanks for joining us. We have some announcements this morning, and don't forget that we are recording, by the way. I think is Shannon here? Shannon was going to make an announcement. I don't see her, though. Okay, Jim, are you ready? Okay.
Good morning. So today's the day, 11:30 a.m. I remembered it 2 weeks in a row now. Is our getting to know us event for newcomers or people who just want to learn more about Unitarian Universalism and the history of Summit and just want to get to know one another better. So it's 11:30 a.m. next door in the library. There will be food to help bribe you. And so even if you haven't contacted either myself or Pam yet, just feel free to show up, and we look forward to seeing people. Thank you.
Shannon, are you possibly on Zoom? Just wanted to check. No? Okay. Well, Summit UU Fellowship is a spiritual community deeply committed to the shared values of love and inclusion. We have no specific Unitarian dogma. However, we do aspire to the principles and purposes listed at the end of the order of service. The mission of Summit is to commit ourselves to building a more compassionate, just, and sustainable world. One other announcement I have been asked by Pastor Casey is to remind everyone, if you are interested in joining a covenant group, she's waiting to hear from you. So she has an email now, you know. So let's use it and make sure that Casey knows if you are interested in being a covenant group this year. We do acknowledge that the land upon which we reside is unceded and part of the long legacy of the Kumeyaay people. The spiritual traditions and enduring sovereignty of the Kumeyaay are the first that we acknowledge from this land, and we honor the continuing presence of the Kumeyaay nation. And now we'll have the chalice lighting. Okay. We light this chalice, symbol of our faith alive in this world, naming the vision of collective liberation and daring to remember each other into beloved community. Please join me in the UU hymn and aspiration. Please stand if you're able. We'll do the first part in Spanish. May love be the spirit of this fellowship. May the quest for truth be its sacrament, and service be its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, and to help one another in fellowship. This is our aspiration. Please be seated.
Good morning, everyone. I love hearing all those voices every Sunday. My name is Casey Marie Pandell. I am the minister here at Summit Unitarian Universalist Fellowship in Santee. If this is your first visit or your 5,000th visit, you are whole, you are holy, you are loved, and you are so welcome here. Our reading today is entitled, Why Should We Intentionally Work for Diversity by Marjorie Bowens-Wheatley. Why should we work intentionally for diversity? The responses to this question vary widely. Of course, hard demographic realities suggest much, but for me, beyond any demographic or sociological justification, there is a theological imperative. Affirming the inherent worth and dignity of every human being, for me, means working to create places of worship where all who subscribe to a liberal approach to religion can not only feel welcome, but enter into worship settings that reflect the diverse cultural realities of we the people. Congregations that reflect the pluralism of our society are one step in beginning to transcend the social boundaries that divide us from each other and from all that is, which some of us may call God. The task ahead of us is an arduous one. Indeed, diversity is one of the most challenging tasks that we will ever undertake as a religious movement. What we are dealing with is not simply radical and ethnic diversity, but a paradigm shift that is rooted in a commitment to growth in a pluralistic community, as well as a readiness for and acceptance of cultural change within our congregations. Welcome to worship. Our time for all ages this morning is a book called Ordinary Man's Extraordinary Deed. If we have any young or young at heart that would like to come up front and join me. And we're going to use the chair today, because I don't trust myself to not trip if I'm reading and walking at the same time. Ordinary Mary's Extraordinary Deed. Ordinary Mary was so very ordinary that you would never guess that she could change the world. This ordinary kid, she did. She changed the world. One ordinary day, skipping her way from her ordinary school to her ordinary house, she passed an ordinary vacant lot filled with ordinary blueberries, blue and juicy and luscious, lovely blueberries. Well, Ordinary Mary picked the ordinary berries and brought them in a big brown bowl to Mrs. Bishop's porch. What? Left berries in a big brown bowl on Mrs. Bishop's porch? That sneaky kid, she sure did. This made Mrs. Bishop very, very happy. So she baked a big batch of blueberry muffins and thought of 5 people who might have brought those beautiful berries and then secretly gave each person a plate. How great! 5 people got a plate. One of those 5 was her paper boy, Billy Parker. And when Billy saw his name on a note in the driveway on a plate, he quickly parked his bike and ate every crumb. Yum, 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 he ate every crumb. This made him so glad that the next 5 people who got their papers got them on the porch, not in the bushes where he normally left them. In fact, he handed them right to them. One of those 5 was Mr. Stevens, who was so amazed that he smiled for 10 hours on the airplane, and then said to 5 different people who had heavy bags, "Here, Let me help you." He smiled, and they smiled too. One of those 5 was Maria, whose cranky little boy James stopped crying when Mr. Stevens played peekaboo with him on their ride home. When he waved goodbye, Maria exclaimed how strange that a stranger would be so sweet. And then the next day, when she was out shopping, once, twice, 5 times, she did something nice for 5 different people. 5 times without stopping. One of those 5 was Joseph, an old, bent and gray man in front of her in line at the produce stand. When he said, "I guess I counted wrong. I don't really need these oranges," little James reached out to him from his basket, and Maria took a coin and put it in Joseph's hand, saying, "Here, take this. Those oranges are on us." As Joseph shuffled to the bus, his heart was full and his eyes were wet, and his hands did helpful things for the next 5 people he met. One of those 5 was Sarah, who was a college girl off to see the world, who stopped at Joseph's shop. When her bag broke and all of her things fell over onto the floor, she said, "Oh, what will I do?" And Joseph said, "This is for you." And he gave her a new bag woven with his own hands in blue and purple and red and green. "Oh, thank you," she said. "It's the loveliest bag I've ever seen." When Sarah left, she felt sunny as noon, and she had on a smile to shine for 5 others, too. One of those 5 was Sophia, whom she met on a boat, looking like the world might end, looking like someone without a friend. "Oh, what beautiful blue eyes you have," Sarah said, "and they're just the color of the lovely flowers in your lovely dress." "Yes?" said Sophia. "Oh, yes," said Sarah. The beautiful eyes shed a happy tear, and when the boat trip was through, Sophia called 5 people to make them happy too. One of those 5 was Tom, her son, the doctor. "Hi," she said. "I love you, Tom." "How great to hear your voice," he sighed. "I always need my mom." Dr. Tom was so cheered up that his next big break, he bought a big bunch of 5 bright balloons for 5 young patients, and he handed them out right then and there. And one of those 5 boys was Peter, a little boy home from the hospital that very day. Gratitude for a big bunch of bright balloons filled him and thrilled him, and he spilled them out onto the next 5 people who came his way. One of those 5 was Eric, a teenage boy whose sacks and such were way too heavy. When one dropped on the sidewalk, Peter stopped his play and rushed right over, saying, "Super Wheels to the rescue!" Well, Eric, no longer stressed, was very impressed and made a mental note that very afternoon to help 5 people too. One of those 5 was Di, his 10-year-old sister, who didn't have many friends and was painfully shy. When Eric said, "Hey sis, you want to come to the park and learn how to ride my skateboard?" she looked at him wide-eyed. "Serious?" she cried. "Sure," he said. And because of her brother, Di decided that maybe she could be a friend to another 5. One of those 5 was Louise, a homeless woman who lived under a tree. She could hardly believe her ears when she heard Di say, "May my brother and I buy you a hot dog and a drink from the stand over there?" Could it be true? Someone actually cared enough to give her food and a smiley-faced ring that was practically new? Louise was so pleased that she decided that even though she had nothing, she would find 5 others and find something. One of those 5 was Mr. Taylor, who lost his wallet in the park. Louise found it full of 5s and 10s and 20s. Oh, what she could buy with all that money! But she found his name and called his home, and over he came. And he was so impressed that she was honest in spite of being poor that he offered her a job in his store and vowed to do something generous for 5 people or more. One of those 5 was Kate, a woman on vacation who wanted to see a show she heard was a sensation. "Oh no," she said, "but it's sold out. I'm going home tomorrow," and her face filled with sorrow. Mr. Taylor held out his ticket. He said, "Here, take mine. I can go anytime." Kate loved the show and was so touched that she thought buying presents for 5 people back home would be really fun. And one of those 5 presents was a little heart necklace for Mary, her niece, and you should have seen her eyes light up in surprise. Mary? What? Ordinary Mary? Yes, ordinary Mary. Ordinary Mary's extraordinary deed had come full circle, and on its way it had changed the lives of every person living. You see, when Mrs. Bishop made the muffins from Mary's blueberries, not only the paperboy Billy Parker, but the other 4 people too made 5 people smile. And those 5 did too. And after a while, in only 15 days, love was sent to every person everywhere. And just to see how it went, all of the people in the world that Mary's ordinary gift touched, all the way down to over 6 billion people. Well, 6 billion is even more than all the people in the world, so after everyone had a share and everybody knew that somebody cared, there was even love left over. The world was changed, and thousands and millions and billions agreed it was all because of one ordinary day. Ordinary Mary did a perfectly ordinary, stunningly earth-shaking, totally extraordinary deed. The end. And here ends our story. I invite our littles to head to class.
We are going to learn a new hymn this morning. We can't, oh. Is that better?
Yep.
Okay. We're going to learn a new hymn. So those of you who can read music might want to look it up in the hymnal. It's number 403. In the gray hymnal, yeah. And Barbara is going to play it for us through once, and then we're going to sing it twice. Spirit of truth, of life, of power, we bring ourselves as gifts to thee. Open our hearts this sacred hour, in faith and hope and charity. Spirit of truth, of life, of power, we bring ourselves as gifts to thee. Open our hearts this sacred hour, in faith and hope and charity. Thank you, Barbara.
Great job on the new song, guys. I know, new stuff is scary, and I keep throwing new things at you all the time. Our meditation today is entitled Meditation on the Power of We by Alandria Williams. Put your feet down because we are about to do an embodiment. Close your eyes. Breathe in, breathe out. When you hear the word liberation, liberatory spirit, liberatory life, liberatory possibilities, what does that conjure in your soul? When you hear, "We are the liberating force, spirit, light, and love," what does that conjure in your spirit? When you hear that we have the power to transform the world around us, what does that mean in your bones? When you hear, "We are the people we have been waiting for," we are, how does that feel in your blood? We are the light, we are the wisdom, we are the ancestors, we are those yet to come. How do we fully hold all of that in ourselves? Open your eyes. Look at the people all around you. Now go out and organize. The process to becoming a Unitarian Universalist minister is long, to say the least. A crucial part of the process is an interview with what is called the Ministerial Fellowship Committee, consisting of various people with various professional backgrounds that can be related to or adjacent to professional ministry. These people volunteer exceptional amounts of time to put ministers into the world of our faith. I still can't pinpoint exactly what moment it was in my own interview last autumn, but something was said, or maybe wasn't said, that led my committee to believe that I needed to take a course in liberation theology. Spoiler, we didn't offer one at my seminary at the time. This was pretty perplexing to me. I had already spent 2 years in seminary. I had another ahead of me. I had already taken my spiritual care courses. I had studied how to serve people from diverse social locations. I was a year into a 2-year internship. What the heck was I missing? Frankly, I couldn't even really remember hearing the term liberation theology. But the requirement was given by the powers that be, and what the heck, I like learning new things. I mean, theology is the study of religious belief, and liberation is freedom from imprisonment and oppression. How tough could it be? Really tough. Incredibly complicated. Now, I'm not going to pretend today that I am in any way an expert on the subject we're talking about. In some ways, that kind of defeats the purpose of liberation theology. See, expertise can be great, necessary even. I certainly want my medical experts creating vaccines and performing our surgeries. But sometimes there are some things with more nuance where expertise isn't always enough. Rather than being the final point, expertise can be but one facet of a larger diamond of knowledge. And in the case of today's sermon, experiential knowledge can, and often does, overshadow expertise. What I mean here is that numbers on a page can only tell you a fraction of the story of a single mother in Compton working 3 jobs to put food on the table and a roof over her family's head. But you know who can actually tell that story? That single mother can. Liberation theology is a very specific movement within Christianity, and one focus of it, in some ways, is on the stories that we tell. The flagship version, sort of liberation theology dates back to Latin America in the late 60s and early 70s. While other cultures have had versions of something that is very much considered liberation theology, the foundation of what we know it as today lays in the observations of a handful of Catholic bishops. They observed the systemic poverty that was rampant in Latin America, seeing not only the social issue of it, but the political. Not only were these some of the poorest of the world's poor, but the realms of difference between them and the wealthy were astonishingly large. And the church was bound to acknowledge it. These Catholic clergy wanted the church to actively do something about it. It became a focal point for these clergymen that their ministry required not only acknowledging the poverty and oppression these people lived in, but the understanding of the socio-political implications of their realities. And it also included an active engagement with the people who suffered. Knowing wasn't enough. Going into the community and working with them is paramount. As Gustavo Gutierrez put it, he is a Peruvian priest and author of the seminal text Teológica de la Liberación, Theology of Liberation. Liberation theology comes from the understanding that poverty and oppression have caused the premature and unjust deaths of many people. That's his thesis statement. For their own part, developing from the teachings that have been happening over these last many years, they've created something called base ecclesial communities, which are small groups of 10 to 30 people who study the Bible, not from their own perspectives, but by stepping into the shoes of the oppressed. And not only studying that Bible, but working closely with the oppressed community. Of course, the perspective hasn't been necessarily popular. There's been plenty of pushback from the Vatican itself over whether or not this theology, with some roots in Marxism, is appropriate or correct. In the end, though, the point is the illumination. How can we possibly turn away from the pain and suffering of the world once God's light has been shone on it? Now, I know "And Jesus Wept" is a little bit on the nose for a title, but stay with me. It's a necessary point of liberation theology. Jesus was a man of the poor, the hungry, the sick, the outcast. He was a man who bore witness to suffering of the world, with Isaiah 53:5 describing him as a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. Part of why I bring this to you, while theology is generally a subject of questions and curiosities and much more thinking and philosophizing, simply learning the plight of the impoverished, marginalized, and oppressed communities of the world is not sufficient. Reading a textbook about what the least of us have experienced generation after generation is not enough. It is armchair activism. Oh, those poor people. It might garner a few bucks here and there to different charities, but in the end, seldom is there really movement towards change. Liberation theology is a liberation of doing. It's a liberation of action. The experiences of those who suffer are the driving force of this theology that is ever growing and ever changing, as people grow and change. It highlights a faith perspective in some ways that has helped fan the flames of many social movements. Another part that I think is really crucial for our perspectives in this room and on Zoom is the Christian aspect. Unitarian Universalists have long shirked traditional religious viewpoints for varied and valid reasons. We are, however, whether some of us like it or not, a faith community with deeply Christian roots. It's so easy to call ourselves a spiritual faith and still never challenge our own assumptions and feelings about Christianity. Summit itself has deliberately chosen more neutral language, preferring fellowship over congregation and barring church outright. And yet there's an aspect of this way of doing theology that is inherently Christian in its scope. Indeed, it must be. It cannot exist without it. And folks, that's a good thing. The oh-so-thrilling Cambridge Companion to Liberation Theology, which is one of the textbooks I will be using throughout the year as we delve deeper into other liberation theologies, states the following in Christopher Rowland's Introduction, A Theology of Liberation. It was thrilling reading, I promise. Liberation theology offers an understanding of God from within a commitment to the poor and marginalized, and a means of thinking afresh about the reality or the ways in which we articulate it to one another. In other words, a requirement of this theology is the God-centric perspective, but not one as a belligerent, punishing, or spiteful being, as we know some texts show God to be, but rather as God the Father, the shepherd. Furthermore, it's not just a biblical perspective, but it is one understood through the eyes of the oppressed. I'm going to repeat that. It is not just a reading of the Bible, but a reading through the eyes of the oppressed. A wealthy man's reading of his private family heirloom Bible does not have the same meaning, impact, or experience as the poor man hearing the words of Jesus spoken from the pulpit. As we know, with everything, interpretation matters. And a theology of liberation requires the nature of lived experience. It sets the foundation for new perspective and a call to action. Now, admittedly, this is not simple stuff, and I'm not going to pretend it is. This is a very imperfect snapshot of a much bigger whole. And there are many variations of this theology based on various identities and oppressions. I'm not going to try to cover them all, maybe 5 or 6. I struggled mightily yesterday with how to explain this to you, knowing that I am far from a theologian and that I was seeking to give enough information to cover the subject, but not so much that I would look out and see glazed expressions. I think I did okay. I think you're still with me. Even more than that, though, there is a humanism streak that runs deep in this community. And I think our examinations of these very Christian theological perspectives may be difficult for some, if not downright unsavory for others. To which I say, stick with it. Give this the same honest exploration we so readily give other faith explorations. When we start feeling flustered, annoyed, activated, or downright angry, get curious. Ask questions. Why am I feeling this way? What is this bringing up for me? Approach this series with a sacred openness and an eye towards understanding, knowing that we may never fully understand, only that we try to seek, and we do so with compassion and kindness. I spent a large portion of my liberation theology class with a whopping 2 other students months ago, pushing back on this same Christianity. I took the course at an Episcopal sort of secondary school, so all of the people I was with, the 2 students plus the professor, are very Christian people. And then you have the token UU. As an avowed atheist turned agnostic, I freely acknowledge that I don't always get it. How can folks from communities who have had the same texts deeply harm them? How can they find solace in those texts? How do people return again and again to these theologies that to an outsider just don't pass muster? What is it that calls them back over and over again? And I suppose that's the million-dollar question, but I also wonder, is it really our place to be asking? Because a faith journey that is meaning-making and life-giving for one person may not be the same thing for another. And really, isn't that the commitment that we make to each other in these Unitarian Universalist spaces when we choose to covenant together? We don't have a doctrine guiding us. The responsible search for truth and meaning, yes, of course, always. And also encouragement towards spiritual growth. It is not our job to understand everything perfectly, whether that be perspectives of God, identities of self, or anything in between. It is our job to support one another on our journeys towards wholeness in all of their divine glory. This exploration together is as much about learning something new, scratching our Unitarian itch for knowledge, as well as embracing new ways of knowing and seeing, which is very much at the heart of our Universalist sides. And that is what I am asking you to do here this year. Just listen. Ask questions. Lean in. Lean into curiosity, to wonderings, to new ways of thinking and doing. They need not become your ways of thinking and doing. But I am asking you to do this theology with me, with us together. Approach our thinking as a sacred space towards liberation, and our feeling as a divine guide toward wholeness. After all, within reason, we do not have to think alike to love alike. So may it be, and amen.
Thank you, Pastor Casey. It's time for our offertory. And if you are feeling enthusiastic about the direction, did I say something wrong? Oh. If you are feeling enthusiastic about the direction of Summit, I hope you will support us by making an offering today. Our Zoomers are invited to contribute to our virtual plate. The link can be found in the chat box. And as always, we acknowledge our stalwart pledgers. They help us keep our doors open. Thank you. Is ready.
We're going to be doing Evita Hammer, known as the Hammer Song. Quick bit of history. It was written in 1949 by Pete Seeger and Lee Hayes, two members of the Weavers. and it was first performed in June of that year, a testimonial to the Communist Party, whose leaders were then on trial in federal court for sedition under the Smith Act. So giving that a little bit of history, you might then understand some of the words. Anyway. If I had a hammer, I'd hammer in the morning, I'd hammer in the evening, all over this land. I'd hammer out danger, I'd hammer out a warning, I'd hammer out love between my brothers and my sisters, all over this land. Ooh, if I had a bell, I'd ring in the morning, I'd ring in the evening, all over this land. I'd ring out danger, I'd ring out warning, I'd ring out love between my brothers and my sisters, all over this land. Ooh, if I had a song, I'd sing in the morning, I'd sing in the evening, all over this land. I'd sing out danger, I'd sing out a warning, I'd sing out love between my brothers and my sisters, all over this land. Ooh, now I have a hammer, and I have a bell, and I have a song to sing all over this land. It's a hammer of justice, it's a bell of freedom, it's a song about love between my brothers and my sisters, all over this land. It's a hammer of justice, it's a bell of freedom, it's a song about love between my brothers and my sisters, all over this land.
We'll do the closing circle song, and I would like Pierre to stay up here and join us.
Oh, not yet. We're not quite
Oh, we're
ready
not-
for the circle
oh.
song yet.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
She's so excited. No, you're good, but you can still stay up here, Pierre. So just a reminder, we want to keep doing these community gatherings. I want them to work for us. I want them to work for everyone in the room, and I want them to work for you on Zoom. So we're going to close out. We'll do our closing circle song. We will take a 5-minute break. At the end of the 5 minutes, you will hear the bell ring, and we will come back for the community gathering time. So if you would not like to stay for the community gathering time, you are almost excused to the salon for fellowship. If you need a bio break, stretch things out, whatever you need, you got 5 minutes after we're done with the service. I know this work that we're going to do together is hard. I know I'm asking you guys to do really big things when I ask you to do theology and liberation together. Stick with it. It's hard for me. It's hard for us. This is some of the good teaching work we will do together to help be harbingers of justice. We want to go out into the world and be a good model for justice in this world. This is a place that we start with the work inside with us. May we approach it with love. May we approach it with curiosity. And those really icky days where it gets hard to be together, may we remember we come into this community in love and care. So may it be. Amen, shalom, salam, namaste, ashe, and blessed be. Almost go now in peace. Let the light within you be a blessing to the world.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. And now the closing circle song. That's the way it works. Just get over here, Casey.
Hand in hand, in fellowship we stand. Before we go, we'll share the glow of standing hand in hand. Together, hand in hand, in fellowship we stand. Through laughter, tears, through hopes and fears, together we shall stand.
5-minute break.
Hell of a voice today, buddy. Hell of a voice.
We'll come back by